Hi guys, in this video we are going to be doing something really exciting. We are going to be building a business-to-business lead generation bot. Alright, so it's going to be a bot built with UiPath, which is going to scrape contact numbers for different businesses from Google Maps. Alright, so let me demo this for you quickly. Here we have the completed bot, alright, the lead generation bot. So to run it, I'm just going to simply click run, and it's going to give us this little pop-up. And it says type a niche which you'd like to scrape, for example, plumbers in Johannesburg. Let's say we want to search for, I don't know, developers, software development companies in Japan. So that's what we're looking for, software development in Japan. Let's see what comes up. All right, so it searches software development in Japan, and there's a whole lot of listings, as you can see on the left. And now if we open up UiPath, we open our output panel, you can see how it's actually busy scraping all the company names and their contact numbers. And we can see it even pages through. So now it's searching, or it's scraping results 21 through 40. Any moment now, it's going to go to the next page. There you go, 41 through 60. And it's going to scrape all these different contact numbers for all these companies. And it's going to keep going until it reaches the end of the list. So I'm going to click stop here. And I'm just going to show you, it also outputs the results to an output spreadsheet over here. So I'll open that up and we can see what it looks like. So if we come to software development in Japan, you can see previously I've scraped plumbers in Johannesburg, barbers in Cape Town, lawyers in Cairo, and then right now software development in Japan. So this is the bot we're going to be building in today's video. We're going to be building it completely from scratch till a fully functional bot that you can use to either scrape your own numbers off Google Maps, or you can use it for any purpose that you wish. All right, but the main purpose, of course, is to learn how to build bots with UiPath, and that's what we're going to get into right now. Let's get straight into it. So I'm going to open up UiPath Studio. Great, so I'm going to select process here to create a new process, and I'm going to call this lead generation. All right, I'm not going to give it a description, it's fine. So I just navigated to google.com/maps. All right, so this is the URL we are going to be navigating to. So I'll drag in our open browser, and inside the URL, I will type out our URL as a string, and I'll also make sure that we have set the browser type to Chrome. Great, I'm also going to check this new session over here so that it opens in a new session. So I'm going to type something like, let's say plumbers in Johannesburg. All right, so let's say we want to scrape numbers for plumbers in Johannesburg. If I search that, here comes a whole lot of different listings, and you can see there it has the contact number for each of these different plumbers. Right, and you can see here it's showing result 1 of 20. So if I click right, it's going to show me a whole lot of more listings. Then inside that, I'm going to use a type into, so we can type text into that field. So we can use a type into, and I'm going to use this indicate element inside browser, and I'm going to select search Google Maps over here. So this is the field where it's going to type into. So what we wanted to type, let's give this a test. Let's just write here something static. Let's say plumbers in Johannesburg. And then I'm going to use this little plus, and then I'm going to use the enter hotkey. So what this will do is it'll type in plumbers in Johannesburg, and then this expression here will actually press enter on your keyboard. All right, so there's also the other option where you can use the send hotkey activity. All right, this over here. But there's also this way of doing it with a type into, where you can trigger a shortcut. In order to activate the shortcut, you need to make sure that simulate window messages is set to true. What I'm also going to do is set empty field to true, so that if there's any text written in there already, it'll clear that. Great, so I'm also going to set continue on error to true. So if there's an error, the process will continue. And I'm going to set the timeout to something like 1000 milliseconds, which is 1 second. So that means if this were to run into an error, let's say it can't find the input field, then after 1 second, it will run into an error as opposed to waiting to the default for the default 30 seconds. Great. So let's check out our selector over here. All that looks fine. We can validate and highlight that. So that looks good. Cool. So I'm going to click OK, and let's try run this and see if it's working fine. So I'm going to click run. So it should now open Google Maps, and it typed it in and it clicked enter. Great. So that worked. So to take this a step further, instead of just having a static input over there, what I'm going to do is use an input dialog to allow the user to specify what we want to search. All right, so I'm just going to title this lead generation. And over here, I will type in something like type a niche you would like to scrape. So after this input dialog, I'm going to create a variable to output whatever the user inputs. And I'm going to call this, let's call it niche to search. So we just created a variable over here, which is of type string, and it's set to the sequence scope. The sequence scope is this main sequence. So I'm just going to rename this to main. All right. Just so we know which is the main one. Where we had plumbers in Johannesburg, I can now delete all of this, and I'll click Control Space, and I'll select our niche to search variable. Right, then I'll click this little plus button and select Enter. All right, so now it'll then search for the specific niche we type. So let's try run this and see if it is working. So here we get the little input dialog, type a niche you would like to scrape. So let me type in something like accountants in Dublin. Okay. There you go. Accountants in Dublin get searched. And great. There's all our results. All right. So now next step is to scrape all the numbers. So what we want to scrape is the names of all these companies and the contact numbers of all these companies. So there is this data scraping wizard, which you could use, though it is unreliable with Google Maps. I've tried it before and it doesn't work, so I'll show you another way to do it. So what we can do is we can start off with a while loop. All right, so I'll drag in a while loop over there, and the condition is while the index is less than 20, and let me tell you why. So if we scroll all the way down here, you'll see that each page of listings has 20 results. Then we can go to the next one. This one has the next 20 results, and so on. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to call it listing index. All right, and I'm going to set the variable type to an integer and make sure the scope is set to main. And I'm also going to set the default value to 1. All right, so now this listing index is referring to each index of each listing. So this is index 1, index 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. All right, so I'll come back here and I'm going to set the condition that so the listing index is less than 20. All right, so what it'll do is it's first going to run 1. And then once it's run 1, it's then going to run 2. And how we can do that is using a counter variable with an assign activity. So I'll drag in an assign over here, and we are going to say our listing index is equal to listing index plus 1, just like that. So now this will increment the listing index. Let's come here to our get text activity. This is the activity we're going to use to scrape the name and contact number for each listing. And instead of get text, I'm going to call it get company name. And I'm going to click indicate elements inside browser. I'm just going to select this first one over here. All right, and let's come and go to edit selector. So if you didn't see what I did there, you just click this menu icon and then you go to edit selector, and then you can come open in UI Explorer. So now we can manipulate the selector a little bit. So currently the way it identifies that specific element, this UI element, which is the title over there, what it does is it looks for Google Chrome, right? And it looks for the URL we are in, which is www.google.com. And then you can see there's wildcards in the beginning and at the end. The beginning, because sometimes there's a protocol like the www and the HTTPS. And on the right, sometimes there's additional pages. So setting those wildcards makes it accessible. Then it identifies the CSS selector. There's the index. This is what we're going to be using. I usually don't like to use a CSS selector. What's usually more reliable is to use a class or parent class property. So I'll select parent class over there. You can see here, this is now selecting index 2. So I'm going to validate that and I'm going to highlight. So by highlighting it, you can see it selects that one. And this is index 2 because this ad has index 1. So let's change this to a 1, validate that, and see if it now highlights our first index. Yes, it does, as you can see over there. So if we change this to a 3, it should highlight our third index, which is this one here. Let's see if that works. And yes, it does. Great. So now we know that this will be a reliable selector. So I'm going to click save. All right. And inside here, where we set our index to 3, we can actually change that to the variable we just created, which is our listing index variable. So now this selector becomes dynamic for each of the different listings. So I'll click validate and OK. Last thing we need to do here is create a variable for our output. So I'll just click Control K to create a new variable and type in company name. Great, there it is. So now we want to use another getText to scrape the contact number. So I'm going to rename this getText to get contact number. Cool. And then we can indicate elements inside browser. Instead of choosing the one with the add, let's choose this number over here. Maybe it'll work better because ads do behave differently sometimes. So I'll uncheck our name and check the parent class. Just click save there. And there is our new selector. And then we'll just change our index property here from 4 to our listing index. Just like that. So I'll validate that and click OK. Cool. We can create our variable over here, Control K, and I'll call that contact number. Click enter. And now we have two variables, contact number and company name. And let's try and output that with a write line activity. So I'll drag in the write line just below those two, and I'll click Control space and select company name. Then I'll click plus VBCR to create a new line, and then select our contact number. Great, so let's see if this works. I'm going to close this and I'm going to run, and I'm going to search, let's just go with plumbers in Johannesburg. Click OK. Plumbers in Johannesburg. So, not sure if it's working. Let's have a look. And yes, it is. There you can see it outputted a whole lot of data. So here's all the output, or here's all the listings. And if we look here in our output, there is all the company names and then the contact number. You can see sometimes it's not the contact number isn't showing. So let's see what we can do there to fix that. So let's say, for example, Hudson's Plumbing Projects. We scroll up. Hudson's Plumbing Projects does have a number, right? But clearly it's not extracting that. Then the third one, it is getting the number for plumbers in Johannesburg. Then the one after that, it's not getting the number. So we need to do a little fix. We need to fix something here. So we can see it's not scraping the numbers properly, and it's probably got to do with the selector. So let's have a look. So I'm going to come to our selector we have here, edit selector, and here we have listing index, and it worked fine for listing index 1 and 3, but it didn't work for 2 and 4. So it actually looks like it's every second listing. So it's 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So that it looks like that's the problem. So it looks like the selector for every second listing is actually different. So let's try identify what the difference is there. So currently this is what our selector looks like. We have our parent ID, which is equal to pane, tag is equal to span, and parent class is equal to section result info, blah, 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 phone number, and then our index over there. So I'm going to cancel here and go to our UI Explorer. And this is the tool we use to experiment and just identify the different user interface elements. So I'll click indicate element, and I'm going to select, so 1 worked, 2 didn't, 3 worked, 4 didn't. So let's click on 4's number over there, and let's see what's so different about this specific index. So there we have title plumbers in Johannesburg. We can just make sure that that is generic with a wildcard. All right, and of course just put a wildcard at the end there, because that's how our selector looks. It looks like now it's actually not scraping anything after we put that wildcard. So let's try something else. Let's try add our parent class ID, validate that. Cool, now it's working. So let's highlight. So there you go, it's highlighting that correctly. So remember, we don't want to show this our name. So let's try uncheck that. Okay, and now we can see there's index 7. Though that doesn't look like index 7, because that should be 1, 2, 3, 4. This should be index number 4. Well, let's just change this. Let's test this. Let's go 1, validate, see if that works. 1 works. Let's check if 2 works. Validate that. Seems like 2 is not working. Then let's go 3. See if 3 is working. So it looks like this is now index 3. All right, I see what's going on now. So that means this will be index 5. So if we come here and we go to 4, it shouldn't find anything. All right. And then if we change this to 5, validate that, it should find the 3rd one. There you go. All right, so now we've seen how it worked. So what we can do for the index is we can scrape, we can increment by 2 instead of 1. So it's like that with the number. Let's just check with the names, because maybe the name is different. Uncheck on name, check the parent class over there, validate that, highlight. So picks up plumbers in Johannesburg for the 1. Let's go 2, validate that, and highlight that. So it looks like the indexes work fine for the actual names, but it doesn't work fine for the numbers. So we can see there it differs. So let's go 4 over here. All right, so we would increment then the names of the businesses by 1 and then the contacts by 2. So let's do that. I'm going to come here and I'm going to go to our variables. Let's just close the UI Explorer. And here we have listing index. I'm going to rename this to listing index name. And I'm going to create a new one, listing index number, just like that. And this will also be an integer. This scope will also be set to main, and the default will also be 1. Then over here where we have our assign, I'm going to copy paste this, right? And now instead of incrementing the name, we are going to be incrementing the listing index number, which is equal to control space listing index number plus 2. All right, because now we're no longer incrementing by 1, we are incrementing by 2. All right, and then here by get contact number, we can go to edit selector, and we can, instead of listing index here, we can delete that, and we can specify our listing index number. All right, we can validate that, highlight that. Cool, there it is. So we can click OK. And now when we scrape our data, it should now have the number even for all the different even numbers or the even listings. All right, so you can see it was only scraping the odd and it was leaving out the even. That's probably something that the Google developers do on the back end to make scraping the contact numbers difficult, because obviously they don't want people to be scraping data like this off the internet. Cool, so let's try now run this and see if it will scrape this stuff correctly now. All right, let's once again search the same thing. So this is going to run into an error. There it is. So it's saying get company name, cannot find UI element, blah, blah, blah. Now, why could it not find that? Oh, that's because we changed the name. All right, so remember we changed the listing index name over here. You would think it would have changed the listing index name inside here by default, but it actually didn't. So let me just come and select the new variable name. Cool. And let's close that and let's try run this. All right, what niche? Again, plumbers in Johannesburg. Click OK. That opens Google Maps, searches plumbers in Johannesburg. Just going to make this a bit smaller over here. And there we have it. Look at that. It is now scraping everything properly. So now we're getting the numbers for every single one. So let's just see what happened there. Looks like it finished running, and that's because there's only 20 listings on the page. Right, so here we just scraped the first 20. So what we want to do next is we want to make sure that we click on this little next arrow so that it can keep on scraping. So let's do that. So how we can do this is we can create another while loop. All right, I'm going to collapse this while. And I'm going to drag in a new while. All right, and this while is going to be for looping through the different pages. So loop through pages, and this one will be for looping through listings. Great, I'm going to drag in this loop through listings into our loop through pages. And then over here for the condition, we need to set a condition. For now, I'm just going to set it to true, so it's always going to run. But we will update this condition in a while. So after this loop through listings, we want to drag in a click activity, and we want to indicate Shift F2. I'm going to open up our Google Maps over here, and we want to click on this little right chevron button over there. So there we have that. Let's view our selector. So that looks a bit messy. I'm just going to maybe replace all that stuff with a wildcard. All right, just in case that stuff's dynamic on different pages. So highlight that. Cool. It identifies the button and we can click OK. All right, so I'm going to call this click next chevron. And let's see what properties we can set here. Let's make sure simulate click is set to true. So now that we've added this click next chevron, before we do that is we just need to refresh our different listing index variables over here. So we need to set them back to 1 because the index is reset to 1 for each different page. Right, so like if I come here and I go to a different page by clicking right, the first item will still be index 1. So if we go to UI Explorer, so even though we're on result 61, you would think maybe this would be result 61, but it's actually not. It's index 1 because we uncheck our name, check parent class, and we can see there the index is still 1. Cool. So I'm going to close that and drag in two assigns. set our listing index name to 1 and our listing index number to 1. Cool. And now let's try run this and see if this works. All right, so I'm going to close that and let's click run. So let's search the same thing. Plumbers in Johannesburg, click OK. Does the search. So it's busy scraping all the stuff, and we can see here we are on result 1 to 20. So let's just watch this and see if it now goes to page, there it is, 21 to 40. And there it is, it's scraping now all the new results. Awesome. So let's see if it now goes to the next page. Yes, it does, and it's scraping everything perfectly. Great, so I'm just going to stop this over there. Let's think, what can we do next? What I'm also going to do is here by the get company name, I'm just going to set this continue on error to true and set our timeout to 1 second, which is 1000 milliseconds, just like that. I'm going to do the same for this get contact number, 1000 over there, and set that to true, just so our entire bot doesn't break, just in case it can't find one of these items. All right, so that's all set. Our click next, let's also set that to true. All right, continue on error and set that timeout also to 1000. And actually what I want to do is I want to test this and I want to run this to see what happens when it reaches the last one. Does it run into an error or what happens? So let's see, because ideally we don't want it to run into an error at the end of the workflow. It should end more elegantly by just ending the process. So I'm going to type in again. Plumbers in Johannesburg. Cool. So there it searches it. So I'll fast forward this video until it has gone to the last page and to see if it scrapes that correctly, because I'm not sure how many results are going to show. So I'll just let this run. So it looks like it has now stopped scraping. We can see here it's just like scraping nothing over there. So I'm just going to leave this for a bit and see what happens. What happens is it brings us to this no results found. So what we can do is we can use an element exists activity to check if this element exists. And if it does, then we stop the workflow. All right, so I'm going to do a search for an element exists. There it is. And I'm going to drag it in just below our last activity there. So I'm going to click indicate element inside browser and select no results found. Let's view our selector, make sure that looks fine. Yes, it does. Cool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable over here, Control K, and say no results found. Enter. Great. So now we've created a variable. This should be a Boolean. Let's see, no results found. It's a Boolean. And let's just change the scope to the main sequence. So this by default will be false, and then when it's true, it means it exists. All right, so I'm going to set no results found. Let's just scroll up. So here where we set the condition to true, I'm going to set our no results found equal to false. That's what we wanted. It should only run while it's false. All right, and then once it changes to true, when no results found shows, that's when the execution should end. So I'm going to click run over here, search our niche again. All right. And I'm going to let this run and let's see what happens. So it looks like we are now towards the end. It's where it's scraping nothing. All right. Because the last page probably only has just a few listings. And now when it's looking for all the other indexes, they don't exist. So there comes the no results found, and there you go. The process just ended elegantly. We can come to our output. We can see the lead generation execution ended. So it's scraped. There you go, 287. And next steps is let's write all these results out to an Excel spreadsheet. So instead of writing all the data at the end, writing all of it to the Excel spreadsheet, I'll show you how we can write it one by one. So line by line, it'll be appended. You can use an append range, all right? And that would go somewhere here, all right? So here where we write line, we can use an append range. So I'm going to search for that. The append range we want to use is from the workbook library. So I'll drag that in over there. The workbook path, I'm going to create a path. I'll just call it output. So it'll create an Excel spreadsheet called output.xlsx. The sheet, what we can do is I'm going to delete that and I'm going to call that the niche to search. So it's automatically going to create a sheet with a name of whatever the niche we searched is. Right, it looks like we got an error here. I just need to put another quote. There you go. And you can see now it requires a data table as input. All right, so what we can do is we can create a data table right in the beginning of the workflow. Let's use a build data table. All right, a build data table. And let's have the first column as company name. It's a string, allow null, sure. Max length, set this to -1. That means it can be of infinite length. Click OK. Column 2, set that to contact number. We'll set this to a string as well. Max length -1. That's good. We can click OK. You can just delete this first row and click OK. So now in this build data table, let's create a output variable, Control K, and I'm going to call this output DT. All right, so that's our output data table, or let's think of a better name than output DT. Let's rather use leads output. So I just changed it over there. Great. And now I'll scroll down. And what I will do is we now need to add data into that lead output data table. So I'll come to our activities and I'll use an add data row. There it is, add data row. So I'll drag that in over there. First, let's just set the data table, which is our leads output. And for the array row, we can use 2 braces, right? The squiggly brackets. Inside there, we can select the company name first, and then we can convert that to a string. It's already a string, so it's actually fine. Or also just make sure we delete this little full stop over there. Then a comma. So now that we have added a single row of data to the data table, we can now, in the data table variable here, we can select our leads output. All right, next important thing you need to do is make sure you clear the data table, or else what's going to happen is it's going to keep writing the same data back inside. So what we're doing is we are creating one row of a data table of one row at a time and appending that to the sheet. So that's why it's important to clear your leads output data table, or else it's going to be re-adding duplicates into your Excel spreadsheet. After we run this, it will create the spreadsheet with the appropriate name. So I'm going to click run. Let's just make sure that Google is closed, and I'm going to run this. All right, and let's type something in. So let's go with, again, plumbers in Johannesburg. And we can click OK. So there it goes. Opens Google, searches plumbers in Johannesburg, and there it's busy now outputting all the different results we have scraped. So I'm just going to let that keep going just for a bit. But now it's actually busy outputting this to the Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to click stop. And let's go check if this is working. So I just came to our lead generation folder, and here is our output folder just created. But there you go, it did work. And then there is our sheet name, plumbers in Johannesburg. Let's try run this again. I'm going to close that. Let's try run this, and I'm going to search now for a different niche. Instead of plumbers in Johannesburg, I'm going to search for barbers in Cape Town. Click OK. Cool. So looks like we have an add data row object reference not set to instance of objects. So I'm going to click stop here. What I'm going to do is try catch. All right. So if an error does happen, that the error gets caught and the process continues. So inside this listing index, I'm going to use a try catch. So I'm going to cut this body out and I'm going to use a try, drag that in, paste in our body, and then I'll add a system exception. And inside here, I will add a log message where we will be logging an error message, which is our exception dot message. So let's try run this. Again, let's search barbers in Cape Town. So let me just click continue here. All right, I was running it in debug mode. That's why it actually showed that. So I can actually show you how to run this without it stopping on an error. But there you go. It's currently working, which is good news. It's still scraping all the barbers and the contact and all that. Still navigating to the next page. So I'm going to click stop here. Let's have a look at our output. And there we have it, the barbers in Cape Town. We can see that it scrapes it all nicely. There's the names, there's the contact numbers. For these two barbers, it looks like they just didn't have contact numbers, but that's fine. So I'm going to close this and I'm going to run this again. Let's just close that. And what you want to do is click this little drop down and click run file. All right, because I'm running it in debug mode, which is this over here. I want to click run file just like that. So now if it runs into the error, the try catch will catch it and it won't display it. Well, it will display it because we put our log message, but it won't stop running. So let's go again, lawyers in Cairo. Click OK. There you go. Let's just open up UiPath output panel. And you can see how it continued to run. You see, even though it has this error at the top, it still continued to run and it didn't let that interfere with the rest of the process. So here we have our Google Maps and there it is scraping everything perfectly. So I'll just click stop there. You can come here to our output panel and we will see our output. There it is, lawyers in Cairo. And there is all our contact numbers and all our company names. Awesome stuff. And that is all. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You can basically use this as a template and build any type of lead generation bot you want. You could also use Twilio. If we search here for Twilio, which is it's a company which allows you to send SMSs. The activity to send SMSs that is created by the UiPath team. It's also for Twilio. There's also Twilio activities made by the community or by Twilio themselves. So as it scrapes a contact number, you can get it to send an SMS directly to that person. And also you can use Twilio to send WhatsApp messages, which is pretty cool as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If it was helpful and you learned a lot, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. And also if you want to download the bot, in the description there's a place where you can download this bot as well as all the different bots we've built on this YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.